Good day, ladies and gentlemen. It is Monday, January 31st, 2022. I'm here today with Blaine Monaghan, the CEO of Pacific Ridge Resources, PEX on the venture. As my subscribers obviously know, and I'm sure lots of you MIF attendees know as well, since Blaine presented at the last MIF, he put out a very good hole late last year. He's done it again with a hole that is as good and arguably better, really, than the first hole this morning. Stock is reacting accordingly, as it should be. And I just wanted Blaine to walk us through what they saw in that hole, obviously give you a bit of a summary of it. But Blaine's also going to kind of give you a better sense of, what these two holes and the third hole mean for ongoing exploration that's going to be ramping up quite a bit this year. And, as I think you'll hear, the two cross sections that you should be able to see on your screen, they kind of tell the story. So take it away, Blaine. Congratulations on another great hole to you and your team. And why don't you give us the highlights of today's release?
Sure, and I'll provide a little bit of context for some of your listeners or viewers who may not be too familiar with Pacific Ridge. So we acquired the option for Kliyul and Redton, another project from Centerra, in January 2020. We have the right to earn up to 75% in pretty favorable terms. We basically have to spend $7 million on exploration, issue 3.5 million shares, and pay 160,000 cash. Great terms. Obviously, that was indicative of the market in early 2020 when copper was just slightly north of two bucks a pound. I really don't think you'd be able to get the project today, and certainly not under those terms. And honestly, it's conceivable that we could make those exploration expenditures by the end of this drill program. We've already spent about 2.5 million at Kliyul and Redton, and we're budgeting a minimum $4 million program at Kliyul this year. I suspect it might be a little bit larger, but it's going to be a much bigger program than the program we completed just this past summer, where we drilled 1,500 meters in 3 holes. We've reported the 2. Next year, we're contemplating a minimum 5,000 meter program in at least 10 holes, and it could be even bigger. We want to do some more drilling at the Kliyul main zone, where the 3 holes were drilled this year. The first hole we drilled was hole 36. And that was the best hole ever returned from Kliyul. It was the previous best was a hole drilled by Teck in 2015. And this was 2 times as good. It was 2 times longer, and the grade was superior, both copper and gold. And the hole we put out today, arguably even better. It was a longer, more broadly mineralized interval, and the higher grade interval was even higher. And more importantly, it stepped out to the west. And so you can see that in those slides there, hole 37, that's the hole we reported today. So that stepped out or expanded the size of the mineralized footprint by 75 meters. I think we can all agree that there's a lot more work that needs to be done here. We plan to do a lot more work this year, but these 2 results give us great encouragement to get back in there with a much bigger program. And I think it's important to point out that prior to us acquiring Kliyul, it had only seen 6 deep drill holes, or 33 drill holes in total at the Kliyul main zone, and only 6 of them were deep. And it was only in 2006 the first deep hole identified the porphyry potential, and then Teck went in there in 2015. They drilled 4 more deep holes, and we're the next company to get in there. And the holes we've drilled, again, have been the best that Kliyul's ever seen, and gives us the hopes that this could be a very big system. And again, these slides here show where there's the room for this to continue to grow, not only at the Kliyul main zone where most of the drilling has been focused, but the east and west targets, which we identified in an IP program in 2020. They've never been tested. We're now looking at a 1.5 kilometer strike length here. And those are 2 targets that we're certainly going to identify or test next year, in addition to the Kliyul main zone. So we think it has great potential to grow, and we're looking to be much more aggressive this year. And I think the results we've returned this year are going to enable us to get out there and raise the funds to do it.
Well, one thing too that I found interesting, I noted it in the alert I sent out earlier to subscribers, was the IP is working great, which which isn't shocking. IP was, if you don't know what IP is, it's induced polarization, where you basically put a charge in and you're measuring how quickly it decays with a bunch of pots that are laid out. So you can basically do a 3D underground map of either chargeability or resistivity. They're sort of two sides of the coin, but IP was designed to find porphyries, and in this case, it's definitely doing its job. But I'm certainly fascinated, especially by Kliyul West, because one, you've got this other chargeability anomaly, but the other thing you have there, if you look at the lower map on the screen, that's resistivity, which is kind of, but not really the opposite of chargeability. It's a little more complicated than that, but you can see there's a very strong resistivity high that's in pretty much the same place as the chargeability high, and it's actually stronger to the west, where there's never been any drilling, where there's also the chargeability high at Kliyul West. And I may just be smoking the good stuff, but my interpretation when I went through that this morning was maybe the gold is going with silica. Maybe the silica flooding is part of what moved the gold around, and maybe that, because one thing about Kliyul is one thing it shares with a few other well-known BC deposits like Red Chris and Saddle, is that it has relatively high gold grades, which you do not always see in BC. BC's got a big porphyry belt, but a lot of them are, they're much lower grade on average than the kind of intercepts Blaine's been pulling here. So, I think there's a good shot for Kliyul West to not only generate a bunch more nice copper intercepts, but maybe copper intercepts with even stronger gold numbers, which would be impressive, and I think get you a lot of attention.
Yeah, and that's certainly a theory we have become more interested in based on these last two results. Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. A lot of smoke. You're not the only one smoking the good stuff there.
I'm glad we're all passing the same stuff around. And you're going to be at the Core Shack, right? I believe, or are you?
We are at Roundup, but we got the results out too late to apply for the Core Shack, unfortunately. So we won't be in the Core Shack, but we do have some core from hole 37, which was the hole we just reported today, and one of Tech's holes, hole 34. So it's nice and polished, it's in boxes, it's looking great.
Wait, what's the high grade stuff from this hole look like? Because you got that section where you get like 24 meters of 2.5%, I think it is.
Yeah, there was a lot of chalcopyrite in this hole, particularly in that particular interval that you're speaking to. So when we first, were visually inspecting the core from hole 36 and hole 37, that's why we were really quite surprised by 36, because it was, honestly, it was far better than we were expecting. We were just hoping it would look similar to, say, Tech's hole, which was, 245 meters of about 0.52 copper equivalent. Right. But it was longer, it was higher grade. We were just really surprised by it. Hole 37, we suspected was going to be quite a good hole and probably better than 36 because of the amount of chalcopyrite in it.
Right. Okay. And I think we've already established hole 38 doesn't look too shabby either. And that's the one coming next.
Yeah, I would be surprised. And if it didn't continue to meet our expectations. I think the real question for that is grade and how much and where and what does the higher grade intervals look like, because we did encounter some bornite in that hole like we did in 36. And again, because we were looking to test the interpreted center of the porphyry, did we continue to intersect mineralization to depth? And I think it's important to point out too that, of the 3 holes we drilled here this year, the only hole that got to target depth was this hole we put out today, hole 37. Hole 36 was a great hole. And we got into a post-mineral intrusion in the bottom of it. And then the pad shifted, so we had to pull the hole. It's our expectations that if we were able to drill through that intrusion, we would have got back into mineralization. But, we weren't able to prove that because we had to pull the rig. And hole 38, the last hole that we're waiting on, we basically lost the hole before reaching target depth, and we ran out of time. We just had to pull the hole, and it was time to demob. So I'm again, I'm looking forward to getting back there next year with a lot more horsepower and more time and more rigs to really fully test the potential of Kliyul. And again, when I say Kliyul, I'm really just talking about the Kliyul main zone. There's a number of other targets, but this has certainly historically been the focus, and it'll continue to be the focus for us. But there's some other targets you may see us test this year in addition to Kliyul main zone, Kliyul West, and Kliyul East.
Well, yeah, and it's worth noting, if you look at the top section on your screen, the chargeability particularly, I mean, the resistivity too, but the chargeability in particular is still open to depth. I mean, what you're looking at is a depth extent that it's possible to model with a geophysical system. That's as deep as the system can take it, that particular one, but it's clear from the colors at the bottom of that section that thing isn't closed off. It's still open to depth.
Yeah, and again, we know both IP and resistivity. It appears they're pretty good guides for mineralization here, but it's certainly not a perfect correlation. I mean, you might be getting mineralization where there's no IP, and you might not be getting mineralization where there is IP. But it's a very useful guide for this type of style of mineralization. Absolutely. And
what are your thoughts about? I have no idea what things are like this year in terms of snowpack or anything like that, but I mean, generally speaking, I mean, I'm sure you want to get in there as early as you can this year. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, that's a huge priority. So last year was our first drill program at Kliyul, and we learned a lot from that program. And I think two of the most important things to come out of that program was that we need to get in there sooner, and we need to have qualified drillers. So last year, there were issues with respect to forest fires, which shut down that main Almanica mining road that, we're only 5 kilometers off, and that travels on further north to Kemess. So that delayed our mobilization into camp. And there were drill rigs, there just weren't enough qualified drillers. So we didn't have drillers working 247. So to get around that this year, we're amending our permits right now so we can get in sooner. We should be getting in there early, mid-June, with a start date late June, early July, and we'll look to go from one drill rig to a minimum of 2 drill rigs with a preferred drill contractor. So I have confidence by getting in sooner, having more drill rigs and qualified drillers, we'll be able to achieve the sort of meterage we're looking at this year, and that's a minimum of 5,000 meters. That's what we're budgeting right now. And
could you theoretically push things a little bit more at the other end of the season? I mean, I realize you get far enough into the season, you just start running into issues with how long your day is and everything, obviously. But is there work to be done, say, winterizing the camp that's not that big a deal that would give you an extra, whatever, 2 or 3 or 4 weeks? Is that possible? Honestly, you need to start winterizing the camp late August. We're up in Alpine here, and it's just totally exposed. And where the Kliyul main zone is, basically is like in a saddle, and the wind just whips through there. So there's no protection. I think that how you're going to be able to extend your season and reduce your costs is by eventually driving a road in there from that Almanica mining road. But of course, that means you have to have enough success to justify that capital expenditure. And I think ideally that's where we'd like to get there this year, where we would demonstrate enough success that you can get in with a program many times bigger and have a road supporting that. So then you get away from helicopters, and if you can support your camp via road, I mean, you can extend your season far out. Yeah. Okay. I mean, I think that covers it for today. I mean, this is another great hole. This project is really shaping up. I mean, I've known Pacific Ridge for a very, very long time. I've known its chairman, Jerry, for a very long time. And, honestly, I hadn't really looked at this until Blaine called me last summer. I was like, geez, it's a pretty fucking target, actually. So I happily wrote a check, and depending on how things go with the next one, I suspect I'll be writing another one. I just think this is a great looking story. It's still a tight stock. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's still this company still doesn't have that many shares. Like the market cap, $20 million market cap for something that looks like it's got the scale potential. This is not even remotely expensive. This is still, anybody who thinks you're too late, you're not too late on this one. There's lots of room for this thing to get a lot bigger and generate great drill results. So great story. I'm always happy to see guys I've known for a long time. It's nice to see the good guys win one. So congratulations, Blaine, Jerry, the rest of you. And I think that covers everything for today.